I had a wonderful time in Brussels, yeah. I really did, went all over the place. I went to several parties, yeah. I remember a Christmas dinner we had. It started about 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve and finished about 4 o'clock in the morning. Tremendous meal we had. Where they got the food from, I have no idea. We had wine and we had ice cream, I remember that. Wonderful.
And where was that party?
That was in Morris's house, yes. He had his friends in and his wife and his mother and father, and we had a wonderful party there. I remember falling asleep and I was absolutely stuffed. I couldn't eat another morsel. It was wonderful.
And so when did you sort of first become aware that you were dealing with this organised, I mean, you obviously didn't know it was the Comet Line, but I mean...
Comet Line?
Yeah.
The first time was when the girl came to the flat where I was, Morris's parents' flat, and questioned me. I spoke very good English, very pretty girl she was. And she asked me a lot of sort of questions to find out if I was genuine. She tried me out with questions that a German wouldn't be able to answer, about football teams and things like that, and things about Liverpool when I told her where I came from. And she was very well versed in that. But it was a very risky job, but I realised afterwards if I had been a German, she would have been in trouble. Anyway, she accepted me and went back and reported, and eventually I was taken into the Comet Line. And once they knew you were okay, then you just went down the line, you know. They did all organised, the forged passes and everything. I was given forged papers, civilian clothes, and kept for several nights in a house run by two women called the Two Elizabeths. It was their job to look after people until they were moved down south to the Pyrenees. What they used to do, a couple of girls would come and take you into town, and we'd go to the Bon Marché, and you'd go to one of these photo machines, and we'd all laugh and giggle, and you'd have your photo taken. You said it was all for the forged papers, but it was made to look like we were having a good time together, you know. It was really wonderful the way they organised it. And then we had these forged photographs on the forged documents. I was an electrician. They asked me what I was. I said I'd been electrical work, so they made me an electrician. A French one, of course. I forget my name, but I had this forged pass.
So, how did you feel about leaving Morris and his family, and how did they feel about saying goodbye to you?
Oh, it was very sad, and of course they said, be very careful what you say, and I said, oh yes, I wouldn't say anything, but it's easy to say, but it's not easy to do, you know. I made several mistakes and gave things away. I always regret that, but... From Belgium to Paris was a very short trip, and somebody took me by train on that trip, but I was told not to stay with them. You always kept away from them, and you followed them. They were like 2 or 3 steps ahead of you. You never walked with them, you walked behind them. So if you were picked up, they just slipped away, you see. The whole thing was very cleverly done.
And when you went through Paris, I mean, you stayed in the stations?
I stayed in, they took me to it was actually a little shop, and there was a brother and sister, and I think their mother, and they kept me there for 2 or 3 nights. They had a little room at the back of the shop, and they slept upstairs. And this little room was kept for escapees, like myself. And they kept them there, and then took them to the train in Paris to go down to Bayonne and the Pyrenees. It was all organised. There were several places in Paris, I believe, where they kept them. And this was the particular one I went to, the little shop, behind the shop. Stayed 2 nights or 3 nights in Paris, and then joined a party at the railway station that went down to Bayonne, And that was there I met Day de Jong, who ran the Comet line. And I also met 2 other RAF men there. One was a West Indian, coloured lad, and the other was a Londoner. And we were all taken, the 3 of us were taken in a first-class compartment with the other 3 down to Bayonne. And we got out there, were taken to a cafe, fed, and then taken to quarters to stay for the night. I stayed with a young couple and slept the night there, was fed there. And then next day we were taken down to Saint-Jean-de-Luz, which was the sort of starting off point for the Pyrenees. The weather was very bad. It rained and rained and rained, and we had to walk to a farmhouse up at the foot of the Pyrenees. We got to the farmhouse, 4 of us then. There was Day and the other 2 RAF chaps and myself. We landed up at the farmhouse, dried our clothes out, were fed again, and kept overnight. And we were due to go over that night, but the guide said that the river had swollen with the bad weather, and he'd have to wait until the next day to see if the river had gone down. The river Bidasoa that we had to cross to get into Spain. The next day at midday, we heard a noise of traffic coming. We said, "What's all this?" you see, and it was German troops arriving. Apparently, some little local farmhand had given the game away, for money of course, to the Germans in Saint-Jean. And they sent a couple of wagons up with troops and surrounded the farm. And we heard we were upstairs in one of the bedrooms having some cheap bread and cheese or something. I remember I had a little table knife in my hand and the door suddenly opened. In fact, I said, "Here come the Gestapo," big joke, you know. And the door opened and in came the German soldiers, a machine gun pointing at us. And I remember putting that knife down very slowly and carefully and putting my hands up. And we all did, the 3 of us, and Day, she was with us as well. And they took us downstairs, stood us up against the wall, threatened to shoot us. We were all in civilian clothing. We all had false papers, which they took off us. And they were going to shoot us as escapers, evaders, whatever, and saboteurs. They called us saboteurs. And one of the chaps pulled out his dog tags, as they call them, his RAF identification tags, and said, "We're RAF, you see, the 3 of us." So they didn't shoot us then. They said, "Oh, well, we'll take you down for interrogation." So they marched us down, and Day as well, down to Saint-Jean, where we were interrogated very roughly. We were banged about and told not to tell lies and so on and so forth. Then we were shoved into prison in Bayonne and we were kept apart. I was in solitary confinement for about 4 months. How I kept my sanity I don't know, but I did. And we were nearly starved. They just about kept us alive. But we hadn't very much to give away. But they were very intent on finding out where I'd stopped in Brussels, which eventually they found out because stupidly I'd kept the address in a pocket in my uniform, and they found that. And poor old Morris was arrested and sent to Germany, and the family were arrested too. I found that out later. At the time I didn't know anything about it. But they kept me in Fresnes was the name of the prison. Kept me in Fresnes until May 1943, so I was in their hands for 4 months. And eventually some German Luftwaffe officers came to see me and started questioning me about my RAF, whatever I knew about my squadron, you know, because I wouldn't tell them that. And I was sent then eventually to Dulag Luft for prison camp. I was the one that didn't get away. Oh dear.
It is amazing, isn't it, this contribution that people of Comic Line made, that a lot of people in Britain just don't...
They just don't realise, no. They were risking their lives the whole time. And some of them were quite young, you know, young people. And there were older people as well, but whole families sometimes went, you know, helped people and risked a whole family, yeah. They're wonderful people. I've met several of them since that survived, you know. Wonderful people. I went back in 1946. I wanted to see Maurice and I found out he'd been caught and shot. But I did see the rest of the family, but I was so shaken I didn't want to go back again. Never went back to see them. They were very sad and shaken. Even the old lady had been put in prison, I remember that. I felt terrible about that. It was through helping me that they were taken.